It's just about the summer solstice. I think today's June 20th. And we're here pulling up our Siskiyou purple garlic, which was planted in October here. And this is an artichoke variety. And we did a video talking about how do you know if your garlic's ready. And I'll reiterate some of that. And we wait until there is a minimum of 5 green leaves. 1, 2, 3, 4. And these are kind of leaves, so 5, and you can see how this one's drying down, this one's drying down, this one dried down and broke off, as did this one here. And each leaf is a bulb wrapper, so that's what you want to make sure you have some good ones intact, so that as you clean it later, I think it's easier to clean garlic after it's dried, but I'll clean one up a little bit here. You want to wind up with a few intact wrappers. But when I look out at this field, I can see it's mostly looking pretty yellow to the casual observation. And then I wanted to point out another one here of what I just dug that was showing a little bit of I believe it's a disease or something called brooming. See these small leaves that are coming out? Whereas this is like the center, the last terminal leaf, which isn't folded like these are, but this one's kind of round. This being a soft neck, it doesn't make escape. But this brooming, I think, is from fertility and water. You don't want to see too much of it. That means you over-fertilized or you're over-watering. Same with if it's splitting open. You've waited too long to harvest it. And there's a sweet spot. We could let this probably dry down a bit more out in the field here, but I'm concerned about all the weeds, the bindweed, and I'm ready to plant this into buckwheat. And then over here, we've got some examples of a hardneck that we harvested called German white. And so if we use this as an example, you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 green leaves. This one's pretty much dry, as are these. And this looks great. This is beautiful porcelain type. Perfect. However, and normally we're harvesting this about 10 days later, right at the end of June. Here's a plant. Look at how big that stalk is. That's German white as well. And so compare the size of that stalk with how big this bulb got. Look at how fat that stalk is. It's about the diameter of a quarter. This one wasn't ready. This could have stayed in the ground another week or two. And to demonstrate why that's important, we're going to do a little bit of science here. And if I cut this open just like this, my hunch is that it hasn't done all of its clove division yet. So let's see, yep. See, that's like an onion. And the cloves haven't formed yet. So we'll cut open another variety, or another head here, and you can see that its cloves have divided. See that? So, we got each of these cloves, and there's a fleshy lining. From my understanding, that division takes place as we go from spring equinox to summer solstice. And the plant, up until then, is mostly like a scallion, just a stalk. And then it begins to bulb, and then those clove divisions form. And then eventually it dries down and becomes papery, like the garlic that we're familiar with. If you want a little fun treat, a cool thing to know is this time of year, see how easy it was to pull these out for using in your kitchen. So, that's all our garlic from last year is all sprouted or dried out. So these are a nice way to approach using fresh garlic in the kitchen. And look how fleshy those clove wrappers are, and that really shows how much they'll dry down as it becomes papery. That's pretty thick. So yeah, so back to this guy. Maybe this one never would do it. Maybe it was too much fertility. What's another interesting thing I'm noticing about this is that normally your hardneck garlics, like we'll go back to this one here, it makes a scape. We broke that off some time ago. This one, there's no scape on it. So maybe this is just a genetic anomaly and it just grew fat like a leek or something. So thankfully we don't really have any disease in here. I can see some slug damage right there. That was a slug. You want to keep an eye out. There's a disease I'm hearing some growers are struggling with called garlic rust. and it looks like a rust-colored spotting pattern on the leaf, and then secondary infections occur, and that can be a problem. So when you're sorting your seed, you want to make sure you're selecting from your most disease-resistant strain of your population. So hopefully that helps. We're bunching this up and hanging it to dry, but you can also lay it out. And sometimes if you have a lot of it, you might want to put a fan on it to speed up the drying. But thankfully here in Southern Oregon, it's nice and hot and dry this time of year, so we don't have to worry about that. So hopefully you're experiencing an abundant harvest. And let's look right over here at some of the other garlic we have still in the field. This is more of the Siskiyou Purple, and it's just about ready to harvest, as is this. And you can see when you compare this German white here, how it's still pretty dark green and it's drying down, where this is an earlier maturing artichoke type. So we're going to pull this today, but we're going to let this sit for another week or so and let it mature. Another consideration that you might want to take into mind is if you have gophers, I would harvest earlier rather than losing your precious garlic to gophers getting it. So we had some gopher activity out here, but I didn't really notice much that had been eaten, so I wasn't too worried about it. And once again, on the note of the scapes on the hardneck, you want to break these off. Here's a late forming one. If you don't, a lot of the energy that goes into making a big bulb will go into growing this stalk, and then you can see this is like a bud, and it's like a false flower thing in there, and it just makes bulbioles. Like if you look in there, they're forming. But I always break them off. They're good to eat, but you want to break them off even if you're not eating them. And that's it. So enjoy your garlic.